From Austin Film Festival, this is On Story, a look inside the creative process from today's leading writers, creators, and filmmakers. I'm your host, Barbara Morgan. This week on Story, we're joined by Celine Song, the writer-director behind Past Lives and Materialists, and legendary indie film producer Christine Vachon for a conversation on the creative relationship between writers and producers.
I think the truth is that every artist should have as intimate a relationship with their producer as they would with their spouse. And the artist is not the beggar for the producer's attention.
On Story from Austin Film Festival. We'll be back in a moment. Hey, podcast listeners. I'm your host, Barbara Morgan, and you're listening to Austin Film Festival's On Story podcast. This week on Story, we're diving into the creative partnership between screenwriters and film producers with two of the best in the business, Celine Song and Christine Vachon. Celine Song began her writing career as a playwright. Her first film, Past Lives, follows the relationship between childhood sweethearts living in South Korea who are separated when one of them emigrates to the United States, only to reunite and rebuild their complicated relationship as adults. Song's second film, Materialists, follows the love triangle between a New York matchmaker, her wealthy, seemingly perfect match, and her financially challenged, struggling actor ex-boyfriend. Christine Vachon is the co-founder of Killer Films, a New York-based independent production company which has been producing acclaimed independent features since the mid-90s, including both of Song's projects. Vachon has frequently collaborated with director Todd Haynes, producing every one of his feature films, including Carol, Safe, and Made December. Vachon's credits also include Kids, I Shot Andy Warhol, Boys Don't Cry, Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and many, many more. AFF moderator Sally Seitz sat down with Celine Song and Christine Vachon for a conversation on balancing romance and realism in Materialists, fostering good communication as a creative pair, and how Vachon supported Song as a first-time director on the set of Past Lives. But before we dive in, we recommend you follow On Story wherever you get your podcasts. If you're an aspiring screenwriter or just a dedicated fan looking for behind-the-scenes gossip on your favorite movies and TV shows, then On Story is your perfect match. Here at On Story, our guests may not all be over 6 feet tall, but with their decades of experience writing for film and television, their insights will have you coming back for that second date.
How did both of you come to collaborating on Past Lives?
It's a script that I wrote hoping that someone would let me direct it. And then, of course, I really wanted to direct it. And I had a lot of good arguments for being able to direct it, which is that it was a bilingual script. And it's very inspired by moments in my own life. So I was like, yeah, I think they're going to let me direct it. But the whole thing was that the script was written so that it was a pretty thorough pitch document on its own. I think about this when it comes to like one's first script that you're trying to get made. I think that there is always a need for it to seem like it's a movie that's going to get made, right?
The one thing I would just want to add about Past Lives is when we first encountered it, it was because my partner, Pam Koffler, kind of at the height of those first few months of COVID, when none of us knew what was going to happen, she reached out to a few people that she knew, including somebody who I think was already representing you, and said, you know what, just send me your best scripts. I just want to read things that inspire me. And I don't care if they're available or not. I just want to read something that makes me feel good about the future of the industry. And Sue Carls, who is Celine's agent, said, I have this amazing script, sent it to Pam, and Pam read it. And Pam knows I hate to read scripts. That's kind of the only way my house gets cleaned, is I'm like, what else could I do except read this? And Pam called me and she said, I just read the most amazing script. And that was months before we actually became involved. So when we met Celine for the first time for Past Lives, we sat down at a restaurant in the West Village, and we already knew we loved the script. It was really about seeing if we were compatible and if we liked each other and if we could go on this like crazy road together. And I think it was me and Pam and David, and we basically said to you, tell us about yourself. And Celine said, when I was studying to be a playwright, I worked for a matchmaking company. And all three of us were like, tell us more.
Well, but that's how I always knew that Materialists needed to be, like, it was something that I was always so interested in telling a story about.
No, you spun an extraordinary story. I mean, we literally sat there for half an hour and you told us a lot of things that ended up in the film. And this was years before we made the movie. And we were completely captivated. And then we were like, oh yeah, past lives. So let's talk about your DP and let's talk about, but it was really, I mean, that was just a great example of, in some ways, what you showed us first was what an extraordinary storyteller you are.
Christine, in a previous interview online, and I'm paraphrasing, you said it's critical that the director and the producer are making the same film. And so early on in that collaboration, what conversations are you having to ensure a shared vision?
Making the same film / knowing the story you want to tell. Those are very similar. And if a writer-director can really express effectively what that story is, then I know as a producer that I don't really have anything to worry about. Look, there's a lot of pivots when you make a movie and a lot of like, oh, well, we didn't get that location, we got this one. It's going to rain that day, but it's the only day the actor can work. All of those things that you just have to roll with. But if the director, and in this case the writer-director, knows the story they want to tell, they can roll with those things because they can figure out, okay, I'm not having exactly the thing I wanted, but I understand the narrative essence of this scene and I can still get to it.
To me, what matters more than anything from all my collaborators, including Christine, is that, do you get the story? Do you get it? And there are parts of past lives that only people who've lived in New York for a really long time can understand, that like I understand and Christine understand. So to me, it's like looking for somebody who is moved by it. I would say that every single person who worked in the movie was moved by past lives. And by the way, there were producers who did not cry at the end of reading my script, right? There are. Now they talk to me and they act like, they do. They're like, oh, I love past life. And I'm like, you read it. You read it before. You didn't want to do it. You thought it should be a comedy. They're fully. People who they're like, it should be a comedy, or should it be so Korean, blah, blah, blah. And then now they're like, oh my God, I always knew. I'm like, no. I'm looking for a producer who understands it for what it is and accepts it for what it is and loves it for what it is.
I mean, Celine has heard me tell this story a million times, but one of the things I love about Past Lives is one of its strengths is almost everyone who sees it thinks it's about them. And the story I always tell is I introduced Celine very quickly to Steven Spielberg at the Academy lunch. And he was like, he'd met me once before and pretended to remember that. And I was like, I just want to make sure you meet Celine Song, who did Past Lives. And he was like, oh, that movie's about me and my wife. And then I faded away, as I should have. And I believe you then had a conversation with him about how meaningful it was to him because it was about him and how he and his wife almost didn't have a life together. And that's the power of that film. And do I feel like I culturally appropriated Korean culture by producing it? Absolutely not. I feel like I enabled an extraordinary artist to make her film.
Well, and I think that the main problem is that the artists feel like they're often in the position of being a beggar. But the truth is that the artist is a person who understands better than anyone what we're going to make together. So actually, the artist is actually I think about them as like the foundation of how a project is going to go. So some of it is actually less about like, well, what does the producer want and things like that. It's actually so much more about, well, how can you communicate effectively with your producer? So some of it is just about, well, do you guys actually know how to talk to each other? Does it actually work? Like when I try to express something, does Christine pick up when I'm laying down? Do you know what I mean? A little bit of that. Just like any relationship. just like any intimate relationship, I think so much is about, are we good communicators with each other? And sometimes you might be talking to the most amazing producer ever. You may not be compatible with that producer, right? You may learn that, just like how you might meet a most amazing person on a date and you just realize walking away being like, they're so great, they're just not for me. I think the truth is that every artist should have as intimate a relationship with their producer as they would with their spouse. And the artist is not the beggar for the producer's attention. It's actually the producer's interest to investigate, and they're like archaeologists, or like when there's a better thing, archaeologists, anthropologists, right? They're the anthropologists for the script and then the project that the artist has, right? And if you're a good director, if you're a good writer, then you have to be also good at communicating what is in the fields that the producers are anthropologists at, right?
I want to circle back to what you said about how there were pivots.
Every movie's just a series of decisions all day long. And I always want to make sure I work with a director who's up for that. The thing we say when a director isn't is we say, uh-oh, my indecision is final. And that's like our code for this person doesn't know what the fuck they want, which was never an issue with Celine. I mean, Celine was open sometimes about, like, do you think this would be better or that would be better? But that's different. That's not knowing what you want. I mean, look, when you work with a director for the first time, every day you learn how to be a better producer for them. And I remember, I think it was on Past Lives, there was something like a pivot that had to happen, and everyone was like, when do we tell Celine? When do we tell Celine? And I was like, how about now? And I just went over to you and said, hey, the thing we thought we were going to be able to do, we can't do. So we can do one of these two things. And you were like, okay, I think I'd rather do the second one. And I was like, okay, great. And I go back to everybody and I'm like, huh? Like, what was the big deal? But that's a good example, because knowing when to tell a director information, it is specific to a director, and it is specific to your understanding your working relationship with them. So I don't blame anybody for being like, should we or shouldn't we? Because everyone was new to working with Celine, because Celine was new to being a director. Now I know on the next movie that we may do, I have a very good sense of like being transparent, but when's the right time?
I love Materialists because it's made me ask these big questions about love, but also it gave me the expectations of a romance, right? These beautiful lit dancing scenes and these great kisses and that great bouquet of flowers, but it also sort of subverted my expectations of a film with romance, right? It brings up the realities of dating, and one of those realities is sexual assault, which comes up when Lucy's client, Sophie, blames her. Can you all talk a little bit about the choice to sort of balance the romance and the reality, and how you go about depicting that?
Well, I think this statistics is pretty, it's a little outdated, which makes me feel like it's probably higher. I think 1 in 3 women experience sexual assault once in their life, at least once in their life. So it was something which I thought was so interesting, because I feel like that data is presented as like 1 in 3 women. And then I was like, well, what if it's a 1 in 3 men too? So I think that it was always in the DNA of the story, because the thing that you're talking about is really a stated thesis and the goal of the film, which is to be quite real about modern dating, and then to figure out how to tell the story about modern dating as honestly as we can while still remaining a romantic film and also cinema, right? Because I mean, like, there is an amazing thing that is like in its heart escapist about cinema, because of course you're looking at beautiful faces of beautiful actors in beautiful places and perfect clothes, right? So there is a kind of an element of a fantasy in any kind of film. Every film is a fantasy. But how do we actually take that opportunity, right? Because something that I know is like, well, I'm inviting an audience into a movie theater where we get to talk about love and dating and things that concern us about what it's like to be human. And then you invite them into this room, and then a part of it is like, well, now that we're all here and we're happy in the summer, in the movie theaters, what if we actually talked about the real thing? What if we talked about some of the things that actually fucks with us, right?
Have you spoken with Sophie L?
Not yet, just Mark P.
I just hung up with Sophie's lawyer.
Her lawyer?
Apparently, she was assaulted on the date.
What? By Mark P?
Yes.
Last night? Are you serious?
She's bringing charges to the company, not you. I have a call with the legal team in 2 minutes, and we're going to figure it out.
I need to speak with her.
Lucy, no.
Violet, she's my client.
She's not anymore. So if Sophie calls, you must not pick up.
I can't do nothing.
Do nothing.
Has something like this happened before?
Of course. This is dating. This happened to one of my clients the third year I worked here. If you do this long enough, it happens to all of us. It's a known risk.
So I think that was always a hugely important part of the movie. It was always in the film. And of course, when it comes to the Harry's leg surgery too, to me, it's like, well, I think that it is not quite fair that we're only seeing the way that women are brutalized in the dating marketplace. Because I think that men are also crushed by it too.
Yeah, I appreciate the storyline about the leg surgery and Harry, because I think so often we see how women alter their value in the marketplace.
Well, leg surgery is I read that it's the fastest growing surgery, of course, among men, but also it's one of the only plastic surgeries that are driven by and helmed by men. Right? So I think that's something that I really want to talk about is like, well, that's a very material thing that you're doing to your body, right? To break your legs. But then you're like, well, what is it for? Well, actually for this thing that we all agree is something that matters to us more than being human, which is value. And of course, throughout the film, you hear these characters talk about value over and over. But then I think something that I know is quite true is that the most important line in the whole film is when Sophie says, I'm not merchandise, I'm a person. What she's saying is that actually human beings cannot be evaluated, right? And there actually cannot be value in human beings. I know it's hard in late capitalism to remember that. I think it's very hard to remember that because the whole world will treat you that way. But we have to still remember when we're looking at their human being that actually their worth in the marketplace of dating, of jobs, whatever, how much income they have, is not going to hold up. Because at the end of the day, we're just two people who are sitting in the same room.
A body is like an apartment. You have to invest to get the value back.
I understand you. I invested too.
Right, I figured.
Did your brother too?
Yeah, we did it together 8 years ago.
6 feet or taller was one of Charlotte's non-negotiables, so I'm glad he did.
I know it sounds stupid breaking your legs to gain a few extra inches, but we keep saying definitely worth it. Changed our lives. With women, completely, of course. Women just approach us and talk to us now, which never happened before. I haven't struck out since. But you can also tell the difference at work, and at restaurants, and airports. You're just worth more.
Was there anything from past lives, like that your previous work and then going into Materialists, were you like, we're definitely going to do this again, this really worked? Or was there something you're like, we're not going to go about it this way? Basically, were there any sort of lessons you took into the second round?
You're talking about learning. Yeah,
learning,
Well,
yeah.
I think that, past lives, I learned from zero. So to me, I feel like all of past lives was a process of learning. Like I just didn't know how to read a call sheet. Like
but that's, not to interrupt you,
No.
but that stuff is easy.
That stuff is easy.
It's like, you don't know how to read a call sheet, it takes you 2 minutes to learn.
Well, that's the thing. I'm like, if anybody makes you feel like you don't know enough, I think I would say really be cautious of that person. Because this is the person that I work with. You see what I mean? So when I'm like, I don't know how to read the call sheet, you don't want somebody who makes you feel like you're an idiot because of that. You want to work with somebody who says, oh, you're going to learn it in 2 seconds.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if you want to know who you want to be partners with as a producer in anything that you're making, or if you want to know who your collaborators should be, always work with somebody who makes you feel like they got the things that you don't know covered, and then that they actually don't think that you're an idiot for not knowing something.
But what I would also add to that Celine brought to the table, is she was never afraid to say she didn't know something. And that is critical.
Yeah.
And when we were on set, if somebody used a term that you didn't understand, you didn't pretend that you did. You just said to us, what the fuck does MOS mean? You know?
But I think a part of it is like you have to surround yourself with people who you can be honest about when you don't know, right?
Right.
And then also you do yourself need a great courage to be humiliated by asking the question. Because I think that, to me, is the courage that actually absolutely is a part of the director's job description.
I would say it's confidence. It comes back to knowing the story you want to tell. Because if you know the story that you want to tell, all of that is just the like steps on the way. And the crew can tell. I mean, the crew can tell immediately, as I said earlier, if a director does know or doesn't. And if a director doesn't, you can feel them kind of like, this is going to be a long movie.
It becomes about defensive filmmaking, right? So to me, it's like, I think being confident is actually a part of the director's job description.
Absolutely.
Like, I think it absolutely is. And of course, there are moments where everyone's going to feel insecure. Just like, parents feel insecure about when they're raising their kids, but they have to present a front of somebody who has to be able to hold down the security, right? Sometimes, of course, I'm feeling insecure. I'm not sure about the scene, right? But what's great is that if you have partners like Christine, then Christine is not going to be unsettled by me admitting that I'm scared about something, right? In a way that I wouldn't want to tell this to the rest of my crew. So I can always go and be like, with Christine or David or Pam, I can be like, I'm so scared, And then they'll be like, okay, what can we do to make you less scared? I'm like, okay, that's not making me scared. That's what makes me scared. There's a whole other section of the partnership that is happening so that the rest of the film set can only see you as confident and has the answers, right? And then what that does is it's not like that's good because it's going to be a fun working area. It actually makes everybody do a better job. Because if people are not operating out of fear and insecurity and instability, like people are then able to work at their most creative, highest level because they're not afraid. Because they know that, God forbid, they have a bad idea, right? It's like, as long as the director is willing to hear it, and then to not make them feel awful for it, and then for the director, if they take the idea and that it doesn't go well, something that I know also is true is that as a director, you have to take the responsibility, right? Because I feel like if you are not willing to take the responsibility for your whole crew's bad ideas that you yourself took, then what happens is you're going to stop getting ideas. And what's amazing is if everybody feels very comfortable in sharing all their ideas, bad or good or the best, and by the way, most of the time it's the best, right? So as long as you're sitting there and you're listening to all these ideas, you want to create a situation where everybody's looking for solutions with you. And that's only going to happen if you yourself are so confident and also you yourself feel completely responsible as the leader.
On Story is brought to you in part by the Alice Kleberg Reynolds Foundation, a Texas family providing innovative funding since 1979. On Story is also brought to you by Bogle Family Vineyards, 6th-generation farmers and 3rd-generation winemakers, based in Clarksburg, California. Makers of sustainably grown wines that are a reflection of their family values since 1968. The project is supported in part by the Texas Commission on the Arts. This show is produced by myself, Barbara Morgan, Elizabeth Mims, and Emily Locke. Our associate producer is Freya Neely, and our editor is Anna Kolarova. Music is by Brian Ramos. Copywriting by Mazzy Smallwood. Production assistance comes from Dennis Moniger, Travis Kennedy Sound, Phil Mazzetti, and KUT 90.5 in Austin. Go to austinfilmfestival.com to learn more about Austin Film Festival and Conference each October. Until next time, I'm Barbara Morgan, and this has been Austin Film Festival's On Story.